Hello,
Hello, dear teacher Elena. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for asking. I'm fine. Thank you very much. Teacher Elena, right? Or Elena? Elena or Elena?
Elena, you can say Elena, yeah?
Elena.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Usually, no, in Russia it sounds Yelena.
Yelena.
So you should say with y, yeah? So
Y.
Yelena.
Yelena.
So Yelena is the Russian name. Yelena.
Okay. Excellent. First of all, can you please tell us how many years have you been teaching English for adults or, kids?
I've been teaching for already, it seems like eternity because I started teaching in 2003. So my first students were, I was still a student and I already had some lessons, private lessons. So that's already a long time.
Excellent, actually. So, speaking of motivation, how can we motivate language learners?
I think we should talk about something that is interesting for the student himself.
Mhm.
So, for example, from the beginning of, mm, so to say, communication with my students, um, I I try to learn about their hobbies
Mhm.
or maybe some interests, maybe some films or music they listen to.
Mhm.
So everything that is interesting for them, I can use for motivating to learn English. For example, if they listen to some English music, for example, with English lyrics, we can take some songs and we can look at the lyrics and we can speak about it. If they have some hobbies, I try to motivate them to make a conversation about their hobbies. So find the words to describe their hobbies. Maybe find some words to invite some people to do the same, for example. Yeah, and not always people are in the mood. Yeah, so sometimes I use jokes or some interesting things, some exciting things from our life. For example, if the weather is not good, then I can have some jokes about the weather or about their life, about their country. So jokes and humor
Mhm.
uh, is very good while learning languages. So it helps a lot.
Ah,
When the person is smiling, then you can do anything, I mean, or a lot while studying.
mhm. Mhm. Excellent, cool. And it says here, what is the difference between young learners and adults? Is there any difference for sure?
Yes, I think there is a lot of difference because adults usually come to learn English by their own motivation. So
Mhm.
they know why they want to do it. So usually it's because they travel or they need it for work or they are just having some troubles with English and they need some help. Yeah. So they are already motivated themselves.
Mhm.
So it's easier to work with such people when they know what they need. Yeah?
Mhm.
And with young learners, there is a problem that they don't know why. Why do we need it? Yeah, like for example, my cousin was always saying that I don't want to learn English because when I grow up, I will just hire a translator or an interpreter, and I don't need the language. And then he grew up and he said, "Oh my God, really, if I knew the language, it would be much easier." so
Exactly.
so you can see that young learners don't know why, they don't know the future, they
Mhm.
can't foresee what can be expected in their life, yeah, if they
Absolutely.
use it or not in the future.
Absolutely.
That's why they are not so interested. They
Exactly.
say, "Oh, I don't care." This is the usual phrase, yeah? And the usual question is why? Why do I need to learn this? Why do I need these rules? Why do I need this lexics? And that's why it's not so easy to work with young learners. So you need to find some motivation. You need to find something interesting for them, exciting, some films, some videos, some music. So you can't just tell them, oh, learn from this to this.
That
No.
is it. Exactly.
No. They don't care about it. Yeah.
Definitely.
And they don't like to do the homework, you know.
Yes, homework is a huge headache for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so it says here, what are the probable problems of students, okay, while they are studying and learning? Because students are basically complaining about, their own lifestyle. How can I say, the material, as you said, the homework or blah blah blah. What kind
Yeah.
of probable problems they may face?
So, as I said about young learners, we can say that the most probable problem is laziness.
Mhm.
Laziness. So they don't want to do anything. They just don't see the reason why. They just think, oh, I can do it later. For example, they procrastinate,
Mhm.
and then they don't get the results. Yeah, they don't get the necessary level of the language. And then, if they don't get it, they uh, they say that, oh, okay, the teacher's not good.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not
They always
me. It's
blame
not.
teachers.
Yeah, the problem is I need to find some other teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is with young learners, of course. And with other people, there are a lot of other problems, of course. For example, sometimes they have some lack of time. For example, if they are business people, if they have some work, sometimes they have such problems as find time, just find time to have a lesson or to do some homework. And then they feel guilty if they don't do the homework. They come to the lesson or they meet again and they don't feel very good about themselves. And it's also a bad thing for their self-esteem when
Exactly.
they have this low self-esteem, when they think, oh, I didn't do this. I don't understand. So they can either stop learning or they can just go back in their studies, and that's a real problem.
Exactly.
And another problem is originally a low self-esteem. For example, if this person studied English at school, for example, yeah, for example, I can talk about Russian schools.
Okay.
We have a lot of problems at school because of fear of mistakes. So at our schools, the teacher is usually very strict, and you get bad points if you don't learn something, if you don't study, if you don't do the homework. Even if you are motivated, even if you like to learn English, even if you are good at it, by this, teachers just make our students lower in their position, and they stop learning. They don't want to develop. They say, oh, anyway, the teacher will not like me, the teacher will give me bad marks.
Interesting.
And that's very bad. So fear of mistakes, low self-esteem, and of course, if there is such a situation, they have no connection with the teacher. It's also very bad. They think, oh, why would I learn if the teacher doesn't appreciate it?
Nice. Exactly. As you said, everything, of course, these kind of stuff can refer to cultural background or whatever, yeah, right? The cultural stuff actually is debatable because, as you said, you just talked about Russian students. So, what about other countries? So, do we have
Other countries, I can
exactly the
say, for
same?
example, I live in Belgium now, and I've been living here for 5 years already. So, and I have seen some other people. So, for example, in European countries, there is another problem. A lot of people hear English from the very young age. They listen to music, they have different programs on TV or on YouTube channels, and there are a lot of tourists coming to different countries, and usually tourists use English because it's, you know, well known everywhere. And a lot of people get the knowledge, or some knowledge, so to say, not perfect, because they can have some mistakes, but they don't care about it because they understand each other. So why care? And that's also a problem for learning. If they learn English, they don't want to take care of the grammar. They just take some lexics, what they heard from songs or from videos from some YouTube. And that's a big problem because their self-esteem is already high. So I know English. Yeah, why should I learn something? When you, for example, at school, you have also some homework. You need to learn something. You need to read some texts or do something else, some exercises on grammar, and they don't want to do it because they think they already know English. And that's another pole of this question.
I see.
So this is also hard to deal with.
Exactly, yeah, you're totally correct. So in general, what sort of material would you recommend them, I mean students, to use, like books, apps, websites? What sort of material would you recommend them?
I usually recommend a lot of books. Reading is very good, and nowadays you can also find some audiobooks. I don't recommend to listen to audiobooks at once. You should better take a book, read it, and then switch on an audiobook. Then you have already some grammar from the book, some structures, and you hear how it's said. So you work on your pronunciation. And also I recommend to listen to different podcasts, maybe TED Talks. You know, there are a lot of good, informative talks at these TED Talks. So you can get a lot of information. You can also choose the topic you like. So judging by your interest, judging by your hobby, and also get a lot of vocabulary, so enrich your vocabulary, and also you can see how the language works. So you get the structures, you get the good language.
Yeah.
And why reading is very important anyway, reading in any case, because when you read, it's like photography in your brain. So you have the structure, you have some constructions you can use in the language. And for example, sometimes it's very good when you read some books and then you find a film based on this book. It's also very good to let you think about what you have read and what you have seen, because sometimes it's very different. Yeah, sometimes the directors decide to change something in the script, in the plot of the book. So it's interesting to talk about it after you have read and you have watched, for example. So you can use it for the lessons as well.
Absolutely, yes. Very nice point, actually.
Some time ago, I was also thinking about learning from music, from songs. But lately, I have seen that the songs are really spoiling. So nowadays, contemporary songs are not so good in quality because they have a lot of slang, they have a lot of grammar mistakes, and it's not good if you just learn. Yeah. So you can listen to it, of course, but not for learning.
They are not official, as you said. Yeah, definitely correct. Actually, very cliche question again. Grammar or vocabulary? in terms of being a good student, or let's say language learner, which one actually outweighs the other one, grammar or vocab? Yeah, which one is much more important, and how can learners improve their grammar and vocabulary? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a good question. So to say, when people say it's a good question, they don't know what to say, but I know what to say. It's just the question is very good because it makes you think as a teacher what to choose first. Yeah? You need to give the vocabulary because the vocabulary is important to build your conversation. If you don't know how to call the things, you will not have the right conversation. The person will not understand what you mean. Yeah?
Exactly.
So that's why at first, maybe at first stage, you need to give some basic vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
And while giving basic vocabulary, you are doing grammar, but gradually, not like all in one pile. You need to do it gradually, one by one, little by little. So, for example, if you start, if it's just a beginner, so you need to give basic vocabulary, and then, okay, what do we use, for example, to describe ourselves or to introduce ourselves? Okay, this is the verb such and such. This is the verb like I have, you have, and such. It is, they are. So you give anyway the vocabulary plus grammar. You can't do without.
Mm-hmm.
Of
Exactly.
course, you can just learn, like you open the dictionary, learn the words as they go, but then there will be a problem. How to connect this word? So you need to know how they work. For example, one verb doesn't work with another word. You need to know about it. Yeah? Or how to show if it's more or less. So you need to compare things. Okay, how to compare things? You need to give this. You need to give the structure, the comparison, the superlative, and such. But
Absolutely.
anyway, it's going gradually while you're working with some vocabulary. Okay, these words we can use in such and such structures. And then after you already worked with the structures, then you add some more vocabulary. Okay, we talked about this and this. Now, using the same structure, we can talk about some other words, about some other things. Yeah? So we described ourselves. Now let's try to describe animals we have, for example. Animals have different words to describe their parts of body.
Exactly.
Yeah? Like cats have whiskers. We don't have, but we already know how to say, for example, face, eyes, ears. Okay, cats also have face or ears or eyes, but they also have whiskers. So you will talk about these. Yeah? So I'm talking about beginners.
Of course.
And then gradually you add some more. Yeah, so it can't be without each other. So grammar and vocabulary, they go just next to each other.
Exactly. Exactly.
But vocabulary has more volume, so to say, yeah? Because you can have more synonyms. And when you are higher in the level, when some person is higher in the level, it's not a beginner anymore, but he learns more and more. He already knows the structures that he can use. Then he can learn some more vocabulary. Okay, now we are going to describe some other things. Yeah? And we need some more words. We take some text, we take some videos, and then we discuss using the same structures.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, of course, as you said, grammar and vocabulary actually are really important. Both of them are really important, and they have to go like in parallel because they complete each other. I mean, they are in need of each other, as you said. Okay, again, it says, how did you personally learn and improve your English?
talking about myself or talking
Yes,
about
yourself. You know, this question tries to get your experience. I mean,
mm-hmm.
of course, we are teachers, but we just started from a point, and then gradually we improved ourselves, right? Even native speakers, of course, they are native
Yeah, right.
speakers, but they started from some point, and then, of course, some other stuff happened, and then they improved themselves. This is actually that kind of question.
I think it depends on your own eagerness to learn. So if you have the will to learn, willingness, then you learn. But so to say, for example, about native speakers, huh? uh, not all the native speakers can teach their language.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is some speciality in
Yes.
teaching the language, because you need to know how to explain some things. It's not like, okay, this word, you use this word. No, you need to explain. Sometimes students can ask you some questions which are really tricky. Why do we use this? Why do we use that? Yeah, so you need to think about it.
Exactly.
You need
Exactly.
to give explanations. For example, as I remember from my experience, when I was working at some school, we had a native speaker, and he came to us, to the teachers of English, Russian girls, and he was asking us, how do you explain this? How do you explain that? So he knows the language, yeah, so he is native,
But
but he doesn't know how to explain, how to
explain.
give the right words to let the person understand how it works.
Exactly.
And we already know, because we studied to be teachers. Not only the language itself, but also how to explain, how to give it. It's very important. So I'm a language teacher, so not only English teacher, but I teach different languages. So because it was my hobby from my younger years. So I was always busy with some languages, and for for now I can say that I speak at least five.
Really? It says here, is it possible to learn multiple languages at the same time? So apparently it is possible because you did it. And
It's
would
possible.
you recommend that? Very briefly, you can talk about it.
I would recommend it, uh, but you need to first you need to understand your abilities. If, for example, there are different people, yeah, like some people are like me. I'm not boasting. It's just the way of my brain works. Yeah,
Mhm,
so
mhm.
I can do a lot of things at the same time.
Yes.
This is also because I learned different languages, and I can hear, I can see, and I can talk different actions. So while I have, for example, a lesson, yeah, I can hear some other sounds. For example, I have my kids somewhere. I can listen to the kids if everything is all right. But it works. Multifunctional brain
Mhm.
works if you developed it. So you can develop it. But of course, if you are just a beginner, it's better to have some level at some language and then add some other. Then it will help. If you already have the understanding of this structure, yeah, how the language works, then a lot of people say, maybe you have heard, that if you learn the second foreign language, it's easier.
Mm.
If you learn some more, then it's even more
Yeah.
easier and easier and easier. Yeah?
Okay.
But sometimes it can be tricky, like I had the problem with German. Yeah, so you need to understand how the brain works. I was thinking, why can't I learn German? I was learning it. I was switching on the audio files and walking around. Usually while learning, for example, French or Turkish, it helped. It was like recording into your brain, But here it didn't work. It didn't want to activate itself.
Mm-hmm.
My little daughter was staying with me at that moment, and she started saying German words, but I couldn't speak.
Interesting.
So I was, yeah, it was a bit complicated. It was German, but there was a very interesting thing about Flemish, also to say Dutch. When I started learning Dutch, my German just popped up, and I said, "Wow, it's very close. It has a very close structure, and a lot of words are very close in pronunciation. Not the same anyway, but they are close. It's like if you talk to, for example, in the Soviet Union, you know, there are a lot of different countries, like Slavic countries, like Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, and such. They have something in common, and if you meet such people, like for example Russian people meet Belarusian people, they can understand each other, they can understand something from their language, not maybe not till the end, but anyway, the same will happen to German and Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
You will understand. Of course you will have some troubles if they speak fast, if they have some mistakes or in such conditions, yeah? But anyway, when you are learning, you are doing it slowly, then you can see, oh, you see the structure is almost the same, so it helps. You can remember both.
I see.
But also I can tell you something very important. For example, if some child goes to lessons of some foreign language, he needs to have separate teachers,
mm-hmm.
so to say. So one teacher is for English, one teacher is for German or for Dutch or for Turkish or anything like this, because in the younger years they have association with the person they speak. The same happens with bilingual children, you know, like if a mother speaks one language and the father speaks another language, this helps. So the child just switches. He doesn't think, oh, I need to talk to Papa in such language. It's just automatical.
Mm.
And the same will happen to the teacher.
I see. Interesting. Cool. It says here, how can learners improve their speaking abilities? Very cliche question, but it is, valuable question.
Speaking abilities, some people don't believe it, but to learn speaking, you need to listen a lot. Mm-hmm. Because while listening, something happens in our brain. I can't say the exact names of the processes, mm-hmm. but it's just recording. There is some kind of memory. You have audio memory or visual memory. Yeah. So it's different kind of memory. Yeah. When you listen, the more you listen, the more tricks or tips for pronunciation you have in your brain. So they stay there, and at the moment when you need to use it, you remember about it. Mm-hmm. Or when you hear some person using this in his speech, you understand what he means. Mm-hmm. So, and that's a very good way to learn a language. Mm-hmm. What, for example, like a child, yeah? When the child is born in some family, he doesn't know how to speak, but he hears. And when parents speak to this child, in a while he starts speaking himself. And the same thing if parents don't bother, there are such families, unfortunately, to talk to their child, or they talk only on such very primitive topics. Yeah, they don't tell them fairy tales, they don't read books for their children. Then the child is really limited in his speaking abilities. And that is really sad, but some people don't understand it. They say, oh, why would I read the fairy tales? He will not understand. Of course he will not understand, but it's recorded somewhere. And then when he has this in his background, so to say, in his brain, he will come to other people, he will hear some words they say, and he will know what they mean.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Speaking of accent and also pronunciation, which one is important, or let's say which one a student should, put his or her energy on? And I received this question a lot. They say American English or British English. Yeah, can you talk about these stuff altogether?
Yeah, of course. So pronunciation is very important, because while you are pronouncing a word, people understand what you mean. Because, for example, in English, there is a problem with this. The word is written differently from the pronunciation.
Yeah.
Or, for example, if you learn the ABC, it will not help you to read. You need to know the structure, the principles.
Yes.
Yeah? So how do you read this combination or that combination? And that's why you need to learn pronunciation. So while, for example, a very good exercise to learn pronunciation, have a text in front of you and listen to the audio of this text, or the words. You have the words in front of you and you listen to the teacher, for example, or maybe to audio files, tracks, just how it's pronounced. Then your brain will connect the word itself, how it's written, with what you hear, and then you know how to pronounce. And of course, practice. You need to practice a lot, because, for example, some people have such languages that don't have some sounds that there are in foreign language. Like, for example, French. Can you imagine? We have a lot of sounds that other languages don't have. So you need to learn these sounds separately. So you need to practice. You need to have some additional exercises.
Exactly.
The same will happen to English for example, Russian students, because in Russian we don't have some sounds that English has. The same will be about Turkish. There are some languages, they have something in common. For example, Italian sounds and Russian sounds are very much alike. So it's easier to learn Italian, for example, for a Russian student. But English students can easier learn Spanish because they have some sounds alike. Yeah? But if an English person studies French, it's a disaster. So this is also important. Yeah? Accent is a separate thing in the language. So, for example, I'm Russian and I most likely have an accent in English. But a lot of people, I was asking about it, a lot of people, a lot of native speakers say that it's a charm, it's good, it's nice to hear, because I'm speaking good English without mistakes in pronunciation. So I'm pronouncing the words almost like they should be pronounced, maybe a little slight accent. But anyway, when I was studying at the university, I was studying at the linguistic university, and I was studying British English because it's the original English, so to say. Because English is some language from England, so you need to
focus on British English.
Yeah, but in my life, I had a lot of experience of communication with Americans, and I understand them very nicely, but of course I can hear their accent, their difference, the difference in their pronunciation. I can hear it, but I'm not trying to copy it, and I'm just speaking as I'm taught. Yeah, but what is interesting about these accents and about these kinds of English, that sometimes when you meet some person that comes from another country, also English speaking countries, for example, Ireland or Scotland or Australia or New Zealand, you will hear so much difference in their pronunciation, and it's the same language.
Yeah,
They
surprisingly.
even can have different words for some things.
Yeah.
But after a while, when you start communication, after a while you get used to this pronunciation, to this kind of English, and you can understand easily what they speak about.
Exactly. Yes, definitely correct. So it is. The question is it possible to learn English without going abroad?
Of course.
How?
Of course it's possible. How? Nowadays, it's really possible because we have internet. You can find any films, any videos in any language, what you want.
Exactly.
But at our time, at our younger years, so to say, we didn't have so much possibility as now. But anyway, we had some recordings, we had some tapes,
Documents, yes.
and we were listening to it. We were listening to the sounds of the language, and we were repeating, practicing, and then we learned how to speak. Of course, if you don't have the recordings, if you don't have tapes or tracks or anything like this, it will be very hard to learn the pronunciation. Yeah, I have met such people who were speaking English, and I was trying to understand what they were talking about. And after a while, oh my God, it's English.
I see.
By the way, it happened in Turkey once. We were in Istanbul, and there are a lot of tourists, and we got to some place where there were some boats, so boat trips, and some guy, a Turkish guy, was talking to me. I didn't speak Turkish so well at that moment. He was talking to me very emotionally. He was trying to explain something, and I couldn't understand. And after a while, I got to know that it was English, and for me it was a surprise. Oh my God, how can people make English so bad?
I see.
So yeah, if you don't have good schooling for a language, it will be not so easy to learn, of course. And if you have the possibility to find some audio files, or to find some videos, to find some films. For example, at my younger years, we had a lot of films not totally translated, but there were like I don't remember how it's called correctly, but when the original sound goes at the background and the translator is speaking over it. So you can hear some sounds.
I don't get it.
I don't know. Nowadays in Russia, we have a lot of films from America and from other countries.
Dubbed, you mean? That dubbed.
Yeah. So they are dubbed. Yeah, right. Sometimes I forget some words. So, and at that moment, when I was younger, we didn't have such system to dub the films totally, completely. So you could hear the original sounds, the original speech of the actors, and then some translator was just speaking over it. So it's not easy to understand a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, you could hear the sound of this language. And I remember I was arguing with the translator. Oh, he translates it not correctly. Oh.
Yeah, it was sort of spontaneous. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so next question is, how long will it take for a person to really learn every necessary element of a language to speak it properly? How long will it take?
It's a very good question. It's not easy to answer, because this depends a lot on the person, on his motivation, on his background. For example, if it's first language, or maybe it's the second language, then it will be easy. Yeah? Or if he's very motivated, like for example, in 2 months he's going abroad, yeah, and he needs this language, and then he will study every day, hours and hours, and then he will have a result. But if a person is not motivated, he doesn't need it so much, it's just like to have something like a hobby, to have some filling his free time, then it can be very long. And also a very important thing, that how the person himself estimates his abilities. Sometimes I had such difficult students when they came to me and they said, I can't learn the language. I have troubles with learning. At school I learned, at university I learned, at the courses I learned, I don't remember anything. I can't learn. I don't have abilities. But it's not true. I had such students, like for example, adults, who had good abilities, but this low self-esteem was stopping them from learning, and they stopped in a while. They didn't want to study anymore because, for example, they come to this school and they say, okay, here I will get very good result, very high level, and then it goes slowly and they say, no, I don't want to do it anymore. And it's not good for their learning.
I see.
So if you're motivated and do a lot, if you do your homework, if you do some extra things for your language, you will learn it very fast.
Very fast. Thank you very much. Final question. It says technology and education. Do you think that these two elements are really good options to integrate together?
I think yes. I think it's very good because nowadays technology can provide us with different apps. For example, on the phone. For example, I have some apps to learn languages, or to have some practice of my English as well. Because anyway, if you are not using it, if you're not practicing, you can forget some words, you can forget the structures. So anyway, you need to train. It's like with sports. I'm usually giving my students the example of doing some sports. If you are doing the sport, you are training every day, you have the muscles. Yeah. If you are not doing it, in a while you will lose all you had. The same will happen to languages. So our brain also, like, they also have some muscles, so to say. Yeah, maybe they are called not the same, but anyway, they work very similarly. Yeah, and if you train, you get better in the language.
Exactly.
That's why it's good if you have technology, like if you can use your computer to find some videos of films. So this is also technology. You can find some podcasts podcasts are very good nowadays. You know, a lot of um, podcasts like TED Talks, or not only this, um,
Are
just
available,
for
yes.
listening, audiobooks, or anything. They all are very helpful for learning the language. And you can have it on your computer, you can have it on your tablet, you can have it on your phone. For example, if you have it on the phone, it's always with you. Yeah? The only problem is with your battery.
Exactly.
So if you use it a lot, you will not have this technology to help you. Yeah?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
this is the only problem nowadays.
Absolutely. Very good. Great. Thank you very much for all of these, answers. Let's say goodbye to our followers and, the viewers. What do you
Thank you for meeting me.
So have a good time. See you next time. Okay.
Okay, goodbye.
Correct. Goodbye.